Hey, anybody here from the UK by any chance? Any Brits here? Anybody? One? Where? Somebody? No? Anybody wake up this morning at 4 a.m. for the royal wedding? What? Notice all females right there. God bless you. Okay, well, we have British neighbors, and like the entire year has been revolving around 4 a.m. You guys all know about that, right? Yeah, like everybody on the planet. Did you know that Pacific Standard Time, 4 a.m. this morning, listen, how many people you want at your wedding? Ladies? What number? What's like a good number for a wedding? 2? Well done. I'm thinking Hawaii. How many? What's good? Like 500? What? Really great. 200, something like that? You know how many people were at the wedding in London, right around Westminster Abbey, live? Over 1 million people watched the wedding downtown London live. And listen, here's what's shocking to me. Over 1 billion people watched the wedding either on TV live or online live. Seriously, pick that up. 1 out of every 6 humans on the planet was up at 4 a.m. this morning. Not you guys. We live in Portland. Who cares? 1 out of every 6 humans all around the world are watching total strangers, for the most part, watching Prince William and Kate exchange vows with this ring, I thee wed. What is it about us as humans that makes 1 out of 6 humans on the planet tune in to watch total strangers? What is it about us that is really captivated by love and captivated by romance and captivated when that snowballs and kind of crescendos into really engagement and the wedding day and marriage and happily ever what? After. Everybody. What is it about us that is really captivating? I think God, the Creator, put an incumbent love of romance in everybody on the planet and all humans. I think God really put something deep into every single one of you here that craves and loves and really is kind of enamored by what we think of as romance. I mean, think about the stats. Like, people, in spite of all the carnage in the world, all the crazy stuff that goes on, people are still getting married in droves, like I said last night. Now, people get married later in later life. I think in 1950, the average age for marriage was about 19 or 20. By 1970, that was about 21 or 22. Today, it's about 27 or 28, going on 1 decade later than your grandparents, right? But in spite of all that, people are still getting married in droves. And I would argue, and please listen, I would argue the 2 greatest decisions you will ever make in your life are, 1, will you follow Jesus? That's like ground zero. That sets the trajectory for your entire life. And notice, not will you believe in Jesus. That's one thing, and that's an incredible step. But will you follow Jesus? And that, if you know anything about the story of Jesus, that's Jesus' invitation all the time. You read the Gospels, he's always walking around saying, hey, come follow me. And that is like step 1. Are you going to follow Jesus? Are you going to make Jesus your pursuit, your calling, your life, your ultimate, what you are chasing after? But I think after that, and that really like sets the tone for the next 40, 50, 60, 70 years of your life, that defines who you are going to be. Will you follow Jesus? After that, I think the next most important really decision you will make is who you will marry. That's why like it's so hard to make that decision, right? That's why you hear people who are back and forth, and it's so hard because you get the gravity when you step onto that stage and those 2 life-altering words come out of your mouth. I do. Where's Fallon and Alex who are about to get married? Saturday. I'm doing your guys' wedding Saturday, right? When you step onto that stage, unless if she gets smart and abandons him in the last 7 days, I love you, buddy. But when you step onto that stage and when Alex says, I do, when Fallon says, I do, I mean, that's like, there's serious gravity. So there's serious traction there, and we get that. Now, I am an anthropologist at heart, which simply means I love to observe humans. And I love to observe and think about the way humans, people, young, old, men, male, female, think and operate and move through life. And after years of kind of observing people, counseling people, working with people inside, outside the church, all of that, I would argue from my kind of experience, maybe I'm wrong, but that many of you are going to marry an amazing person, not perfect, and you're going to have an amazing relationship, not perfect, but you're going to step into an incredible story. Many of you are going to marry the wrong person. And by wrong person, I don't mean like the one. You remember that from last night. I don't mean like the mythic soulmate that out there is like your second half and like I don't mean that at all. I simply mean somebody who's not right for you, who's not a good fit for you, who's not what God is calling you to step into, not God, who God is calling you to partner with for God's calling on your life. But there's a whole other category, and I think a giant number of you who are going to marry the right person, spot on, and follow Jesus right where he takes you to the person God takes you to, but are going to go about that the wrong way. Meaning you're going to go about love and romance and dating and sexuality and your wedding and your marriage and your early years really with a nice heart and kind of on the right track, but really kind of in the wrong way. And here's why. It's not to shame you by any means, but we as a generation, I think, are flying blind. I think we really don't have like a frame of reference, right? Like when we think about what does love look like? What does loveology look like? What does love and dating and romance and relationships, what does all that look like as God intended? With the intentionality of God's brilliant genius, like what does that look like? And I think tons of you are flying blind. You have no frame of reference. You don't have any idea what a healthy relationship looks like pre-marriage. Meaning, you don't really know what that progression should look like from, hey, what's your name, to relationships, to moving forward, to physicality, to the way. You don't know what that should look like, and we are flying blind. And what happens when you don't really have a frame of reference is you end up mimicking what you see around you, right? What you see on TV, what you see in culture, what you see in your friends, what you see in the streets of the city. You end up kind of reflecting that rather than really following in the footsteps of Jesus and the way of God, which means we need to get at glimpses of what God intended for relationships. Now, that is where the Song of Songs comes in. Like Mike said, right after Proverbs is a obscure, crazy, erotic Jewish book of love poetry at the tail end of the Jewish scriptures. And we think it's written by a man named Solomon, who was the king over Israel, about a young woman he calls the Shulamite here in the poem. And we think the story kind of goes, there's a rich, busy, hardworking, powerful king. He falls in love with a dirt-poor, working-class peasant. Opposites attract. He falls in love. She falls head over heels for the king. And in the song, we get all sorts of glimpses of what that relationship looks like. Now, it's kind of hard to like decipher and interpret because it's not in chronological order, which means all you get is like glimpses and pictures and marks. And wow, here's poetry all kind of around what a healthy relationship pre-marriage, not post, but pre-marriage looks like. And if you call that dating, okay. If you kissed dating goodbye, well done. I hope you're having fun hugging, courting, hello, or whatever. Or if you are into arranged marriage and on your way to India or wherever that is, I do not care. Whatever label you put on that, in the song we get glimpses. Okay, here is the kind of relationship markers that God looks at and he says, yes, that is right. Not perfect. He's not perfect. Neither is she. But here's what God looks at and says, wow, write that down. Put that down. That's really, really good. Put that in the Bible. Now, in the song, we get 4 glimpses. It's not going to take very long, but we get 4 kind of like marks of what a healthy relationship pre-marriage, if you're young, if you're dating or courting or whatever, or on the way to India, whatever, what a healthy relationship, kind of moving in the trajectory to marriage, what that looks like. We get 4 glimpses. You guys ready? Anybody? Yes? Okay. First off, if you are taking notes, write down the chase. Write down the chase. Let's start in chapter 2, where the king takes her, in today's language, on a date. Let's pick up in verse 8. Listen, she says, the woman here speaks. She speaks all the time. Some things never change. 8, listen, and that's not bad. God is down with that. Listen, she says, my lover, look, here he comes. Leaping across the mountains, bounding over the hills, right? He's coming over. She knows he's coming over to take her out. 9, my lover is like a gazelle or a young stag. I like that. You ladies, next time he comes over, hey, you young stag, you, right? Look, there he stands behind our wall, gazing through the windows, peering through the lattice. Now, don't misunderstand ancient Near Eastern poetry. He's not like a peeping Tom here. Like, the idea is courtyards, ancient Near East. He's coming in, he's looking through, he's walking into the courtyard. 10, my lover spoke and said to me, and listen, guys, to how he speaks. Arise, my darling, my beautiful one, come with me, right? Notice he romances her, he speaks. See, the winter is past, rains are over and gone, flowers appear on the earth. The season of singing has come, it's beautiful outside. Princess William and Kate were on TV this morning. Let's go out. It's springtime, the time of love all through history. The cooing of doves is heard in our land. The fig tree forms its early fruit. The blossoming vines spread their fragments. All through history, spring is the time of love, the symbol of love. Arise, he says, come, my darling, my beautiful one, and come with me, the chase. Right? He chases her. He pursues her. He romances her. He woos her. He coaxes her. And she is 110% down with that. Right? She says, my lover, he comes after me. He's looking in the window. He's leaping. He's like a young stag, you, right? That is an essential, healthy, beautiful, fun part of what a relationship looks like. Now notice in the story, it's the man who pursues the woman and not the other way around. Like he gets that. He says at the end, arise, come, my darling, my beautiful one, come with me, let's go out into the fields, let's go out into creation. He's the one who calls her out, and he gets that it's his job as the man to lead her in that way, to pursue her, chase after her. She gets that. Back in chapter 1, you don't have to turn back. She opens, one of the first things she says in the poem is, draw me away with you. Right? She is like open and ready to go and flirting up the wazoo with the guy. And she says, listen, draw me away. It's her job to stay open, to draw, but it's his job to chase after her. And there's beauty in that. Because men, like remember from last night, we are called to lead. Not like in an authoritarian, sexist way, but simply in an out front way. And that starts day one. First impressions are everything. And that starts the moment, hey, what's your name? Right there at that moment, you as the man, you as the dude, God's calling is for you to pursue, you to step, you to lead into what happens next. Now, keep in mind, we're not going to talk really about dating, because dating is not in the Bible. Dating is a modern Western phenomenon. Keep in mind there are unbiblical things and extra-biblical things, meaning unbiblical things which are like contrary to what the Bible teaches and not okay. Extra-biblical, meaning not that, but simply not in the Bible. Lots of things are okay per se, but not in the Bible. Dating is like that. And we have to be careful when you get to the Bible, when you get to 4,000-year-old books like the Song of Songs, not to import all of your ideas and values about romance and what culture should look like into the text. And you have to try your best to distinguish between what's cultural and biblical. And you get into all kinds of questions and thoughts and opinions, and I'm sure lots of that is going to come up in the Q&A, and that's okay. But you get all kinds of questions, and some of the questions are culture, others are biblical. For example, here's what's cultural. How should a guy ask a girl out? It's not a biblical question. I have my opinion. I'm right. We all know that, right? But like, wherever you come from, I'm like, weird. I think a dude should like talk to a woman eye to eye. I think he should walk up and say, hi, what's your name? I think he should talk to her. I think with his shoulders out, he should say, what are you doing Thursday night? I would love to take you out to dinner. I think he should show up at her door with flowers in hand on the first date, take her out to a nice dinner that he can afford, guys. And he should pay for all of it, not half of it. And when he's done... And when he's done, he should take her home, tell her she looks beautiful, close the door, and walk away. Now, you may think that's lame. You may think, no, dude. You say, what's up? And you're like, so, I go to a coffee shop on Thursday afternoons, like kind of 1-ish. If you ever like go to a coffee shop kind of like that, if I'm there and you're there, like maybe we should Facebook each other or something. Like, let's hang out, right? If that's your style, okay. Ladies, how do you feel about that? No? Hey, I'm just saying. I'm sorry, guys. Trying to help you here. Older brother, trying to help. But that's cultural. That's not a biblical question. There's not a right answer to that. There's not a wrong. That is 100% culture. Here's what's biblical. Guys, you're the leaders. In romance, there should be chase, there should be pursuit, there should be a give and take and a back and forth and a play in the best sense of the word. And man, that's your job, to step out, to lead into that, to chase after her and pursue her. Now, for the 450 guys in here who are scared to death right now, I feel your pain, right? I was not, and you all know this if you know me at all, I was not hip at all. Like, you know, you guys who are really like suave with the sisters? I was not like you. I was homeschooled for a long time, way too long of a time, and I bear the scars of that, okay? And I'm like awkward. If you know me, like in social settings, like I am really, you think I'm awkward up here? One-on-one, like I'm weird, like I'm awkward, I don't know how to handle myself. And when I was 18, 19, 20, I got married really young, but when I was 18, 19, 20, the most terrifying force on the planet was called woman. And she comes close, and I was like out the other side into my like history books or whatever, like, I mean, really scared. Now, the good news is my wife was a total flirt, and she was like super comfortable and like out there. She was homecoming queen. She's like, hey, how are you? And I was like, you're a flirt, but I like you, right? And hey, it all, I would bash flirting, but it worked, right? You got me, right? For better or for worse. Now, point there, I get how scary that can be. I get how scary walking up to a woman, pursuing a woman, chasing a woman, romancing. I mean, can you imagine walking up and saying, hey, my darling, arise. My beautiful one, come with me. Yeah, I'm down more with, I'm hanging out Thursday afternoon at coffee. What are you doing, right? I get how scary that can be, but here's what I want to say to you guys. There's something underneath the surface that is way more important than whether or not you buy her flowers on the first date. Really what we're talking about is faith that comes out in the form of risk. A central part of becoming a man is learning to take risks. A man who will not risk will never amount to anything in life. A man who will not step out, put his neck on the line, and risk total failure on a regular basis will seriously not step into the life that God calls you into. And no matter how hard you try to insulate yourself or protect yourself from failure, how does that work? Not very well, right? No matter how hard you try to insulate yourself, at some point in time, you will fail. The odds on failure are crazy, 100%. Like, you will fail. Some of you will fail louder and in more public ways but you will all fail. And you know what, guys? That is okay. And until you get that failure is not the end of the world, and what other people think of you is not what defines you. What God thinks of you is what defines you. Until you get that, you will live in a paralytic state of fear. And God does not call his people, male or female, but specifically you guys, God does not call you to live from fear, but from faith. You need to get that. The gospel of Jesus sets you free from fear. There's a fear all over Proverbs and throughout the scriptures that is called the fear of man. And the idea of that is the fear of what other people think of you, the fear of your reputation, the fear of your image, the fear of whether or not people like you or whatever. The fear of man is a paralytic, ending, emasculating force that cripples men and women all over the planet. And the gospel of Jesus sets you free from the fear of man. Because if you fear God, Proverbs 1, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, you have nothing else to fear, am I right? And if you are loved by the living God, and if what defines you is the love of God and the approval of God and how God thinks of you, not the love of others, not the approval of others, not how others think of you, but if it's God's love that defines you and you are safe in that love, and no matter what happens, no matter how large or hard or brutal or public your failure may be, if that happens to you, if you get the love of God, who cares? You're loved. You're safe. That's what defines you. And that enables you to live from faith, not from fear, and to step out of the boat, so to speak, and to walk on water, so to speak, and to follow Jesus. Maybe that looks as simple as, hey, what are you doing tomorrow night? I would love to take you out to dinner. Maybe it's way more serious than that. Maybe that has to do with decisions and where you live and what you do and where you go and whether or not you step out. Maybe that has to do with whether or not you share Jesus with friends or roommates or the list goes on. The list is endless of the ways that fear hold us back from the full life that Jesus calls us into, from the full orb of potentiality, what could and should happen when you follow Jesus. Fear will end every good story. And we are the people on earth who have nothing to fear. People who fear God have nothing to fear. Because you're loved, that's what defines you. You're safe, you're right, you're God's son or you're God's daughter. And if you fail, you know what? That is okay. But in the story, he goes, he puts himself out there. There are times when you do that, guys, and she says, nope. And then it's awkward for like 2.5 years with her. And she walks in, you're like, I'm sitting on the other side of the room, and that was like a year ago, right? I get that. Now, not Solomon. He goes, she comes, everything works out. Once in a while, it only takes one, guys. That's the good news. It only takes one. She says, you get one to say yes, and you're good for life. Now, let's keep going. Turn over to chapter 8. One more. That's like the first, one of the marks of what a healthy relationship looks like. The chase. He pursues her. He chases her. He's after her. God says, wow, that is what a healthy relationship looks like. And if you are engaged or if you're early, you're young, marrieds right now, that, by the way, does not end on your wedding day. That simply catapults into the future. But next, if you're taking notes, write down the three flames. The three flames. Song of Songs, chapter 8. Skip down to 6. She speaks again. And she says, place me like a seal over your heart, like a seal on your arm. For love is as strong as death. Its jealousy unyielding as the grave. It burns like a blazing fire, like a mighty flame. Many waters cannot quench love. Rivers cannot wash it away. That is poetry. Am I right? She says, love is like a fire. Love burns, love consumes, love engulfs, and love, the right kind of love, is unquenchable. Now, one of the problems with the English word love is it's really like limp and benign. Would you agree? Because we only have like 2 English words to denote positive emotion. Love and like, right? I'm like, I love you, bride of my life, Tammy. I love Star Wars, right? Like we only have one word. But in Hebrew, there are not one, but there are 3 words for love. And all 3 words show up in the song. If you're taking notes, the first word is raya. Can you say raya? Yeah, now in Hebrew, raya love is friendship love. Raya is, he is my best friend. She is my best friend. I can tell him anything. I can talk with her for hours and hours and hours. Raya is when you love to be with him night and day. Raya is when you get along. Raya is when you not only love somebody, but when you like somebody. What a novel concept. When you enjoy one another's company, when you like the same things, when you go the same places, that is raya, love. Now the next word in Hebrew is dode. Now, dode is sexual love. Dode is the last teaching. Dode is Song of Songs 4. Dode is I want to make lots of babies with you, right? Dode is when he is the archetype of masculinity, ladies, and you can only imagine him in a tank top. Dode is when she, brothers, is Aphrodite incarnate, right? Dode is when it takes every ounce of the Spirit of God working with your effort to stand pure, to live in what Mike was talking about. And dode, in the right context, in the echad of one man, one woman in covenant together for life, dode is a beautiful part of love. But the last word is ahava. Can you say ahava? You can't. Okay. Ahava is like deep, passionate, soulmate love, so to speak. Ahava is I want to be with him or her for the rest of my life. Ahava is I cannot imagine my life with anybody else. Ahava is when you stand at the altar and the pastor says, will you have, will you honor, will you keep, as long as you both shall live, and the words jump off your tongue, I do. I'm in. That is ahava. Now, all three loves are important. You need all three loves to stand the test of time. Think of all three loves like three separate flames. You have the raya flame, friendship, the dode flame, the sexuality. You have the ahava flame, I want to be with him or her forever. Now, if all you have in your relationship is one of the three or two of the three, when the wind picks up, when life kicks back against you, when time gets hard, when time goes on, when boredom sinks, your flame will fickle out and die, right? If all you have is raya love, you get along, you're friends, you love going to the movies together, blah, 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 but there's no man, I cannot imagine my life without him or without her. Or if all you have is dode love and you love making out and you think she's crazy hot or you think he's this or that or the other, but when you're not making out, you don't really have anything to talk about. That will not last, and you don't need the Bible to figure that out. Am I right? That is not a love that will last. Once the euphoria wears off, once the sexuality wears off, once you get bored, once he gains 5 pounds, whatever, right? That wears off, that flickers out and dies. But if you have all three flames together, if you're friends and you're together and the sexuality is driving and you're counting the moments to the wedding night, and if you have ahava and you are with him, I am ready to spend the next however long with him, as long as we both shall live, that is the kind of love that will stand the test of time. That is what you are looking for. That is what you are praying for, hoping for. That is what you are contributing to. If no relationship is perfect, because nobody is perfect at all. And don't go up into crazy La Edward land right there with that. But that is what you are chasing after. That is what you are looking for. Don't marry somebody you can live with. Marry somebody you cannot live without. Marry somebody you are ready to give your life to until death do us part. Now, let's keep going. Turn back over really fast to chapter 4. If you're taking notes, 3, first mark of a healthy relationship, he chases her, pursues her. Second, you have the 3 flames of really burning, passionate love that is really, really deep and vehement. 3, if you're taking notes, write down the line, and we will get to what that means in a minute. Chapter 4, Mike was here. I'm going to circle back to what he says in 12. Chapter 4, 12. You remember wedding night, first night, man and wife together in the bedroom. And he says, you are a garden locked up, my sister, my bride. You are a spring enclosed, a sealed fountain. Now, like Mike said, all 3 of those phrases are ancient euphemisms for virginity. You are a garden locked up. You are a virgin. She gets to her wedding night with her virginity intact. Now, you need to understand how the Bible works. The Bible puts way up high, here's what God's after, here's the intentionality, here's God's plan, here's Genesis 1, sex is good, sex is powerful, sex is incredible. Puts that up, here's what you are striving for, here's what God invites you and calls you into. Now, how many of you get there all the way, all the time? None of you, not one. Like Paul says, I think later in Romans, all have sinned, past tense, and fall short, present tense. Right now, you fall short here and now of the glory of God. Nobody is perfect. We all have different brokenness, baggage, dysfunction. All of that is true. And in spite of that, knowing how it's hard, God puts that up there. Here is what I'm chasing after. Here's what I'm calling you into. Now, the question becomes how? Like, how do you get there? Like, how do you get to your wedding night with your virginity and your purity intact? Or if that's not part of your story, how from now on do you draw the line in the sand? If any person be in Christ, he or she is a new creation. The old has gone, the new has come. The past is water under the bridge. In the words of 1 Corinthians, you were washed, you were sanctified, you were justified. You are now 110% pure in the eyes of God. A woman walked up to me last night with tears in her eyes and said, how do I get clean? You could see she was broken and repentant. And I had the joy of saying, you already are. That is the gospel, am I right? But whatever your past may be, how do you get into the future? How do you get to Song of Songs 4, verse 12? How do you get there on your wedding night, blundering around, no idea what you're doing with your husband, and having the time of your life? I think you listen to the Shulamite and how she gets there. Turn back to chapter 2. There's a refrain that shows up, pops up 3 times in the poem called the Song of Songs. Look at chapter 2, skip down to 6. She says, and here's the refrain, his left arm is under my head, his right arm embraces me. Right, that's foreplay. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you. Now, who are the daughters of Jerusalem? Her posse, right? Yes, her sisters, her posse, her little estrofest that goes on all around her. Thousands of years ago, guys, nothing changes with time. But she says, listen to the young, amorous, single friends of hers, daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, listen to me by the gazelles and by the does of the field. I have no idea what that means. Do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. Turn over to chapter 3. Look down at verse 5. Again, she says, daughters of Jerusalem, my friends, single virgins, listen, I charge you by the gazelles, by the does of the field, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. Turn over to chapter 8. Again, at the end, she says, chapter 8, look at 3. His left arm is under my head. His right hand embraces me. You know what that means. And the point here is she's now enjoying sex as a wife. She now, with her husband, is loving sex. And she looks back at her friends who are virgins, who are not yet married, and she says, for the last time again, daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, please, listen. Do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. The idea there is, listen, don't get that train rolling. Don't go down that path until it's the right time. Because once you open up that door to dode, to the sexuality piece in love, once you open up that door, love has a power. Sexuality, dode, has a magnetic, addictive, consuming power. In marriage, that's one of the most beautiful things you will ever experience. Outside, that's one of the most dangerous things you will ever experience. Do not go down. Do not arouse or awaken love. Now, Mike did all of the theology of sexuality and all of the theology of fall and how Jesus redeems, and all of that is beautiful. All I want to add to that is that we get questions all the time. Okay, I get that. I get intercourse is wrong. I get blah, 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 what God is after. But where's the line, right? Let's get down to earth, nitty gritty, practical, what's okay, what's not okay, what's sin, what's not sin, where's the line? And what we all mean by that is I want to walk right up as close as I possibly can to sin without feeling guilty, right? And you hear me all the time, it's nothing new, but you're asking the wrong question. And if that is your question, you're going to come up with all the wrong answers, and you're going to live in that kind of nether world, that gray, awkward, semi-guilt, shame, am I okay? Like, no, you're asking the wrong question. The right question is not, hey, where's the line? How close can I get to sin? The right question is, how holy can I make this relationship? How pure can I make this relationship? How can I love my boyfriend, my girlfriend? Like, think about one of the most subversive passages in the entire Bible is 1 Corinthians 13. Now, if you're like me and you have spent time in church or lots of time in church, I think of 1 Corinthians 13, which is the chapter all about love. Love is patient, love is kind, as like my grandma's cross-stitching verse, right? Like that is like, I think like precious moments when I hear it. Like love is, I think butterflies and twitters and, like that's how. But do you realize how subversive and passionate and antagonistic and countercultural that theology of love is to everything you hear on the streets? Everything Hollywood screams at you. What's the first thing God says love is like? Love is patient. Patient? I would argue that is about the bottom of the list when you think about how Hollywood understands love, right? Hey, what's your name again? Let's make out and have sex. Right? Love is patient. One of the problems with how culture thinks is culture understands love and lust as synonyms. And that's not true at all. Lust and selfish, narcissistic behavior are synonyms. Love and patience are synonyms, but not love and lust. Lust, impatience, stepping into that, reaching into that, is about the most unloving thing you can do. I cringe when I hear couples say, but I love him, justifying. No, you don't. You lust him. Love is patient. Now I simply want to add on the relationship end, not on the theology end, but on the relationship end. Here is why purity, why patience in love and the sexuality of your love with your boyfriend or girlfriend or your fiance. Here is why that is really, really important, and please hear me out. Purity builds trust. And trust is the foundation of every healthy relationship. Would you agree with that? That's why it doesn't matter. That's why people who have sex before marriage and are still virgins before that and never have sex with another person for the next 60 years, only one, still have issues and problems as a result. Why? I mean, you're echad, you're all good with the Genesis 2 theology, one person put together, you never rip apart. Why are there still problems when people make love before marriage that lasts for years? Because you rob yourself of one of the most central aspects that should come out of a dating or courting or whatever relationship, and that is trust. Because as anybody knows who's dating somebody right now, if you have any semblance of dode going on, you know that it's wicked hard to stay pure. Am I right? It's wicked hard to keep your hands in your pockets. If it's not, why would you marry him, right? Like, it's wicked hard to stay sexually pure and save yourself and live patient. That is really, really, really hard, and that is part of the beauty. Please hear me. Because you are showing your future spouse, if that becomes the reality, that he or she can trust you. Fast forward out of all the euphoria of how you feel right now to 10 years down the road. Turns out he is the one. He says yes or she says yes, or you get married. Years go by. Now you're on like baby number 3, sisters, right? You weigh like 50 pounds more than you do right now. You have cankles or whatever, right? I know, I'm painting a negative picture. I'm sorry. You're like, I was on the line about childbirth. Now, no way, right? But whatever. Fast forward, you're down. Your husband is away on business. He travels all the time. You want to be able to live in total implicit trust. No fears, no wondering what if, where's he at? Or vice versa, rewind, it goes both ways, 110%. Where is she at? Why is she late? Why is she not back? I wonder what she's doing. You never want to have thoughts like that in your mind, not one time. But the problem becomes if he or she was not able to keep his hands in his pockets, was not able to control his sexual urges and desires before you were married, who's to say he will be able to after? If he was not able to keep himself, hold himself back, if his love was not, or her love was not patient for you before marriage, well, who's to say 10 years later when the feelings wear down and the euphoria wears off and things change and grow and mature, who's to say she's going to be able to stay pure and faithful and steady and patient then? Trust. Nobody thinks about that. Purity builds trust. That's why where is the line is the lamest question on the planet. It's how holy can we make this? How can we step into 1 Corinthians 13 love? Love is patient. How can we love one another? How can we set one another up for years of trust and intimacy? And I don't know where he is, and I don't care because I trust him, because I trust her. And that comes back at a time, and Jesus redeems everything, brothers and sisters. But that's what God calls you to. That's what's up here. That's what God is after. Now, some of that, before we move on, some of that is really like practical wisdom, like what Mike said, going out and hanging out in public. Like that was the rule. There are several like parameters my wife and I put around us that by the grace of God put us to the wedding night, both as virgins, by the grace of Jesus. And the one was wisdom. It's not a rule. It's not a verse in the Bible. You are free to disobey. You are free to obey. Whatever. You're free to take the advice, not to take the advice. But wisdom that was passed down to me by many others, older, wiser in the faith, that I'm now passing on to you, is what Mike said. And the rule for my wife and I was we will never be alone together, ever. And by alone, I don't mean like, never have a private conversation. I mean like we will never be alone in a house together, lights down, nobody around. That is like asking for disaster. That if you have dode at all, if you're going to have a good sex life down the road, that is like simply placing yourself in a spot for temptation. Like you need to understand there's a really important passage in James that I'm always taking people to, where he says in James chapter 1 that, when you are tempted, don't say you're tempted by God. God cannot tempt anyone. But, he says, each one is tempted when he or she is dragged away by his own desires, your cravings, your passions, and enticed. And then when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. Now, what's really important about that is that you get, first off, temptation is not a sin at all. When you are tempted, you don't need to feel guilty. It's not sin. Sin is, but temptation is not. But what we don't hear enough is the reality you have a say in how much you are tempted. Each one is dragged away by his own desires and you have a say in how much you are tempted. And some of that is really practical, down-to-earth stuff. If you go over to her apartment and nobody's around and you turn down the lights on the dimmer and you put Chris Brown in the background or whatever, and you get together on the couch and you put your arm around her and you pray to stay pure in your relationship. That is just stupid. I'm sorry. I know God can do anything, but seriously, help God out once in a while, right? You're asking for failure. You're asking for disaster. And some of that's really practical. It's like Mike said, you call before you get there. You call when she's gone. My wife and I, we were never alone. That means we spent a lot of time at my parents' house, at her parents' house, lots of time at coffee shops, lots of time walking in the parks, lots of time enjoying time together, but never alone. Her parents would go out at night. Her parents were not at all enforcing that, but hey, her parents would go out at night to the grocery store. We're like, whoa, we thought we were staying home. Now we're going to a coffee shop until late at night and hanging out, right? But I am so grateful to God for that wisdom. I have no doubt, not to be crass, but we've been married 9 years. My firstborn is 5 years old. I have no doubt that were it not for that rule, my firstborn would be 10 years old right now. You do the math on that one. But wisdom like that holds you back. I mean, it's really, really, if you're with people, if you're in public, it's really hard to get pregnant when your mom's standing next to you. Really doable, but really, really awkward and really, really hard. Don't let your imagination play with that one at all. Point is, it's wisdom. First off, you need to, wisdom, you can take that, you cannot take that. That was passed down to me. I'm passing that on to you. I think that is the saving wisdom that will keep you and hold you to your wedding day. Next thing, you need to talk about the line. I know that's awkward. I know that's hard. Dudes, you're the leaders. You are the ones that need to lead that conversation. You need to sit down and say, hey, listen, I really like you. I think you're amazing. This is going to be a really awkward 5 minutes. But let's talk about what's okay, what's not okay. You need to bring others into that who are friends, who are family, who are with you, who are holding you accountable, or helping you, because you want to get to chapter 4. You want to get to that point when you show up and there's trust and intimacy and vulnerability and you feel totally free. That is what God is after for you. Now, one more. Let's keep going. What are we on? Number 4 here. Last one, the journey to the wedding day. Look over at chapter 3 and let's end here. Chapter 3 and verse 6 is the wedding, like coming to the wedding day. Verse 6, who is this coming up from the desert like a column of smoke perfumed with myrrh and incense made from all the spices of the merchant? Look, it is Solomon's carriage, escorted by 60 warriors, the noblest of Israel. Guys, here's all your broskies, right? All of them wearing the sword, all experienced in battle, each with his sword on his side, prepared for the terrors of the night. I have no idea what that is. I live in the city. Terrors of the night are like, I don't know. King Solomon made for himself the carriage, the Aston Martin, Prince William riding around, right? He made it of wood from Lebanon. Its post he made with silver. Its base with gold. Its seat was upholstered. Its interior lovingly inlaid by the people who will not go away, the daughters of Jerusalem. Why are you always around? 11. Come out, you daughters of Zion. Look at King Solomon wearing the crown with which his mother crowned him on the day of his wedding, the day his heart rejoiced. The entire nation looks to the king on his wedding day as he looks to his bride to be. The journey to the day. You need to get a very simple, very binary reality at the point of dating or courting or whatever is not dating. All relationships should be moving, building, crescendoing, escalating into marriage. All relationships should be moving either towards or away from, and that's totally okay, marriage. Towards the wedding day or away from the wedding day. Either towards, wow, I think we could really serve one another. I think we could really be a good fit. I think we could really help one another into the mission of God. Or, I really don't think I want to serve a guy like that or a woman like that. Or I really don't, he's amazing or she's amazing, but I don't really think we are a good fit personality-wise. Or, hey, we're missing the raya or this or that or the other. All relationships should be moving in that direction. That's how it should always go. Practical wisdom, practical thoughts. First off, don't date until it's close to the right time to get married. That doesn't mean you have to be 30, make 75 grand a year, have your 20-year plan at all. But like if you're not at all anywhere close to, then don't go down that road. You're not quite ready yet. Wait until it's time. Wait until you're ready. There's a line in Proverbs, really fast, I want to read to you guys. In fact, turn over if you want really fast to Proverbs 24. If you want, you don't need to. But Proverbs 24 says in 27, finish your outdoor work, get your fields ready. After that, build your house. That's like practical, down-to-earth wisdom. Finish your outdoor work, get your fields ready. Now in the ancient Near East, fields were your income, your source of income, your job, your career. Get your fields ready. After that, build your house with your family, your property, your wife, your marriage. Now, that does not mean you have to be 30 and have all your ducks in a row at all. But that simply means you need to be thinking, guys, if you're young, if you're 18, 19, 20 years old, now is the time to get your fields ready. Now is the time to get down on that path, like all this stuff from last night, to get on that trajectory. And after that, or as you go along, build your house. You need to ask honest, practical question. Is now a good time? Am I healthy? Second piece of advice I would give to you is take as long as you need to make up your mind if he or she is the one you want to invest the rest of your life with. As long as you need, no pressures. But once you make up your mind, once you make that decision, I'm going to marry him, I'm going to marry her, at that point, get married as fast as you can. Because, last piece of advice, dating for a long time is really not healthy. It's not healthy sexually, it's not healthy relationally, it's not healthy emotionally, because all relationships should be going somewhere. The point of your relationship is not your relationship. The point of your relationship is to move, to serve one another, to learn one another, to get to know one another, to learn one another's strengths and weaknesses, flaws, failures, successes, hopes, dreams, fears, to learn whether or not it's somebody God's calling you to partner with for the rest of your life. And once you figure that out, next step is, wow, get married, step into what God has for you, and start serving Jesus together. But if you drag that out, that gets really unhealthy. There are times when you have to because you're young, right? Or like I was ready by the first, I know I'm weird. I was like love at first sight with my wife. And I know lots of you guys, it takes like 3 years of all, and I totally get that. But for me, it was like, you love Jesus, you're hot, let's do this, right? Like, holy cow, my goodness. It was like by the first date, it was just like, making sure everything was good before we popped the question, right? I was like ready to roll. And that's my story. Everybody's story is different. But we had to date for a while because she was in high school. Don't worry, I was like 12, so it was okay. But we had to date for a while, and that's fine. There's time when you have to get through that, but that's not wise. It's not what you shoot for. All healthy relationships should be moving somewhere, going somewhere. The point is not, hey, let's hang out and have fun for a while. The point is, are we going to get married? Are we going in that direction? Is that the next step? You take it seriously in the best sense of the word, not like in a heavy, somber sense, but in the best sense of the word. Is that what God's calling us into? And when you figure that out, you step in with joy to what God has for you next. And who cares how nice your wedding is? I know I'm going to rant here. It drives me nuts when people will date for like 4 years. Well, why are you not getting married until like 2014? Well, you should hear our honeymoon plans. Or she needs the ring that's like $8,000 or whatever. Have you seen my wife's ring? There's not much to see there. You're like, there's a, really? In there somewhere? Hey, we were really young, okay? We were really in love. And I love this part. We're coming up on 10-year anniversary in June. We're going to hit 10 years. And she seriously has, thank you. She seriously has like the lamest ring on the planet. I'm not going to plug your ears for something. It was like $250. It was really, really bad, right? I was like 20 years old. I was going through college. I was working at a church making $950 a month, and I was head over heels in love and trying to figure out how to get married. And I hope you didn't hear that, babe. And the plan was I was going to buy her a nice, fancy ring for the 10-year anniversary. Here we are. We're ready to go. And she said to me a while back, please do not buy me a nice ring because this is now part of our story. And I was, I like that. Thank you for saving me like $4,000. But I don't know what your story may be, but what's more important, having a $4,000 ring and a honeymoon in Maui followed by some place nobody's ever heard of, or really stepping in life together and serving one another, whatever that may look like. Seriously, don't date for forever and ever. It should be going somewhere, should be moving somewhere. Now that's what God says a healthy relationship looks like. Man, when you have the chase and the man pursues the woman, when you have all three flames, you have friendship, you have sexuality, you have deep, forever, vehement passion, when you have that kind of a passionate love, when you have really purity in the line and you're building trust and vulnerability with one another and loving and patient with one another, when you are moving somewhere, going somewhere, progressing in your relationship, that's the kind of glimpses, pictures, images of a relationship pre-marriage that God looks at and says, wow, well, write that down. Put that in a book called the Song of Songs. Now, let's end. Turn over to 1 Thessalonians. I'm simply going to end here. After that, we're going to take a really fast break and come back with Q&A. But turn over to 1 Thessalonians. There's a line that I love in 1 Thessalonians 4 where Paul, he writes a letter to a fledgling church in the city of Thessalonica. And here's one of the things he says near the end. 1 Thessalonians, to the right, kind of way to the right in your Bible, in the end of the New Testament. 1 Thessalonians 4, let's pick up in verse 3. Paul says, it is God's will. How many of you wonder, what the heck is God's will for my life, right? Like I get that question all the time. How do I know what God's will is? You read 1 Thessalonians 4. Here's what God's will is. It is God's will that you should be what? Sanctified. That's a Bible word. That means set apart. That is God's will for your life, to be sanctified, to be set apart. The idea here is to live different, to live out of sync with the world around you, to live nothing like how the world lives, to live the way of Jesus. And notice the example of what he says. Listen, here's how you live different. The second half of 3. You should avoid sexual immorality, all of tonight. That each of you should learn how to control his own body in a way that is holy and honorable, not in passionate lust like the heathen. Meaning to Paul, what marks out pagans, so to speak, people who are far from God, far from the gospel, is immorality and love gone awry and a loveology that is all upside down and all sorts of wrong patterns and behaviors and ways of thinking about love and romance and sexuality. That's what marks out people who do not know God. Don't live like that. Live sanctified, live set apart from that. He goes on, who do not know God, and that in this matter, no one, now he speaks to believers, should wrong his brother or take advantage of him. Notice the language, his brother. That echoes Song of Songs, where the king over and over calls his bride to be my sister, my spouse. Meaning long before she is his lover, long before she is his spouse, his partner, she is his sister. And your boyfriend, long before he's your boyfriend, is your brother. Your girlfriend, your fiance, long before she is that, she is your sister. And you are to treat her with that kind of a love from God. And Paul says, listen, when you have sex with somebody who's not your husband or your wife, who is your brother or your sister, it's like defrauding, it's like cheating, it's like robbing from somebody. That's how the world lives. That's how pagans who do not know, that's what marks people that do not know God. And he goes on with his, kind of warning, the Lord will punish men for all such sins, as we've already told you and warned you. But notice what he says, and I love the ending. For God did not call us to be impure, but to live a what? Holy life. I think holiness gets a bad rap, right? We think of the word holy as a negative, heavy, somber, pejorative. That is so far from what Paul is thinking in the back of his mind. The holy life is the fully human life. To live holy, to live set apart, sanctified, different, out of rhythm with the world, to live holy, that is life, that is truly life. That means to live as God intended. That means to live as everything that God wants for you. That means you live, back to in the beginning, male and female, with your masculinity, your femininity, your identity coming from God. That means you live sexually and relationally in a way that is human to the fullest. That means you live like God intended. That is what not only Paul, that is what Jesus calls you into. The gospel is a reality and an invitation. Meaning it's a reality. The Bible says you are holy. You are saved. Paul in lots of other places says you are sanctified. You are right with God. You are pure. You are blameless. Now go live pure. You are set apart. You are different. Go live different. You are nothing like people who are far from God. You know the living God. Go live. And here's the invitation. Go live like people who know God. You are fully human. That's the reality of the gospel now because of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. The coming of God to you in Jesus. Because of all of that, you are now fully human. The invitation? Let's go live like that. Live holy. Live after all God wants. Amen?